Thank you guys all so much for being here. So this is Beyond the Core Knowledge. I just want to be clear that I am throwing no shade at Core Knowledge Foundation or its amazing resources. I just wanted to go beyond the concept of core knowledge in our conversation today. So this is Beyond the Core Knowledge, Teaching American History Holistically in K-5. My bona fides for that we'll get to. But we're going to explore meaning and purpose in the study of American history in the grammar years, beyond essential figures and dates, what virtues, vices, and philosophies animated the founding and the continuing work of the American experiment, and how are we going to do it with our littles? Some of you have been in some of my sessions before, so hi, welcome back. This is my third session today. Thank you for being here at 2:30. So if you could get out your phone real quick and let me know you're here so that we can come back to these sorts of things. So just scan that. It'll be on the next couple of slides too. But those of you who have been in my sessions, we're going to do the same activity. Have anybody here been in both of my other sessions? Okay, you guys can tell your groups how to do it. Okay. So this is a real quick activity called Origin Story. There is an apocryphal story. I haven't actually found the source of it. So Hemingway supposedly once gave a story in 6 words, and it said, "For sale, baby shoes never worn." Very sad story. What we're going to do is write our own 6-word story. Some of you have done this already. And that is about your own name. So 6 words about one of your names. It can be any of your names. I will go first. My name is Rachel. Limited letters, Jewish family, not Harley, is my 6-word story. And I come from a Jewish family, so traditionally you only name your children after deceased relatives. So we only had a few first letters, and in America it's like you don't have to use the whole name, but you homage them by giving it the first letter. And my mom, my last name, my maiden name is Davison. My mom wanted to name me Harley Davison. My dad did not want that, so my name is Rachel. She wanted to get the shirts and put an X over the second D. She thought it was going to be adorable. I'm kind of grateful my name's Rachel. But that's our story. So I'm going to give you guys a minute to come up with your own origin story. So 6 words that convey the story of one of your names. For those of you who have done it before, raise your hand so people know if they have questions. Oh my gosh, so many of you have been in my sessions. Thanks for coming back. Okay, so you know how to do it, so ask one of those people who just raised their hand. So 1 minute. And for those of you that didn't get a chance, there you go. If you need the instructions, they're up. 6-word story. You've had about another 30 seconds. You'll be able to share in a few moments. This is just time to write your story. 6 words. Your story can be, "I don't know, this is hard." That can be your story if you want it to be your story. Okay, sounds like most people have their story, so turn to someone you don't know. Turn to someone you don't know and tell them your 6-word story. (10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 30, 36, 38, 40, 42, 45. Okay, you're going to have about another 30 seconds, so hear another story. Someone else should speak now. I love this. Okay, finish up your stories. You have another 5 seconds to finish up your thought. And we're going to come back together. Okay, so so throughout today's session, hopefully this gets you in the mood that this is going to be pretty interactive. You're going to be talking to each other, gathering around ideas, thinking about things both personally and professionally. So I want you were just very much in student mode. Now I want you to go into teacher mode. Tell me metacognitively, what purpose does an activity like that what does it do in the group? Isn't that, but why? What does that mean? What does it do? How does it break ice? It gets people talking. What did you say? It builds camaraderie real quick, yeah. You get personal quick, but in like a low stakes way, right? Because you got to choose the stories. So if it was like something real personal, you knew you were going to have to share it. So you were like, I don't know about that. I want to talk about my deceased parent or something along those lines. So you got to choose. What else? It was engaging, right? So it was very low stakes. You only had to talk to someone right next to you. You didn't have to shout out. You didn't have to talk in front of all 50 people at once immediately. What else? Creativity and creative thought. So the other thing I love about this particular one is it gets to their creativity really quickly. You can learn a lot about someone's creativity in 6 words, right? Like this one in particular has a lot of creativity built in. Any other thoughts? It was specific and succinct. It only takes 3 minutes. So it's 90 seconds setup, 30 to 60 seconds, 30 to 60 seconds. What I do have them do is sometimes I'll have them pair around the room, and then I'll do it multiple times, right, so that people can hear more than one story. But yes, it's very bounded. It's a very bounded activity. Okay, so why are we doing this? Why are you in this session? Why is the Bill of Rights giving this session? Those of you who have been in my chats, this next 10 minutes is going to be very familiar. So the Bill of Rights Institute's mission is to teach civics. That's why we're doing this. We equip students and teachers to live the ideals of a free and just society. We seek an America where we more perfectly realize the promise of liberty and equality expressed in the Declaration of Independence. And this calls for a civic education that helps students examine the story of our country and exercise the skills of citizenship. We take that really seriously. We make a public promise that's up on our website. And the way that we do all of this is that we build everything we do on what are called founding principles and civic virtues. So the Bill of Rights Institute is donor supported. Everything we do for teachers is free. All of our 4,000 resources on our website are freely available. And we are building between 200 and 300 new resources a year. For the first time ever, we have been funded to do a K-8 suite of resources. So that will be coming out in the next 2 to 3 years. The first one will actually come out next year, and we're rolling them out so that we can get them into the market as soon as possible, because we hear from lovely people that there is a need for like content-rich, virtue-rich history and civics. So that's what we do. My name is Rachel Davison-Humphries. You got a little bit of my BRI credentials. My classical credentials are I'm a Johnny. I went to St. John's College. So for those of you, that means something. That's my husband and I are Johnny's. My daughter's name's Alethea. We're nerds. That means truth in Greek, and that just shows how nerdy we are. Neither of us is Greek. We just thought the name was beautiful. Before we ever knew we were going to have kids. Where was that? Okay, and I also taught at Great Hearts Scottsdale Prep for a little while, and I've been part of the classical community for a long time, consulting in various capacities. I love thinking about what is the pedagogy of a free society. What are the structures of education, the ways that we design our classrooms and our environments for students that support a self-governing, independent citizenry. So I'm very invested in this work. It's my vocation. It's my calling. It's what I'm passionate about. So if you ever have questions about that, please reach out. There's a small network of people working on that problem. So BRI teaches civics. We provide learning experiences, original content. Our principles and virtues are actually on top of what we're calling our Educating for Self-Governance pedagogy framework. We're going to be rolling that out. But what are the pedagogies? What are the ways that we engage with students that also support this in addition to the virtues? And you can find, so in one of the bags, there is a handout. Everybody can get one because we have them in the back. So if someone could hand those out, that would be awesome. Yeah, if someone could hand those out, that would be awesome. There should be enough for everybody. Yes, those, yeah, the handout, that, but the other thing in your hand too. There should have been They should have been all in the bag. No. In that bag, there's a huge stack of those. There you go, everybody gets one. So these are classroom handouts that have the founding principles on one side and the virtues on the other side. We design everything we do, looking at both teachers and scholars, but also our founding principles and learning design, and we have a pipeline of resources that are coming up. The resource we're going to be looking at today is called Heroes and Villains. These are all the units in Heroes and Villains. You'll kind of see where our conversation is going. And we'll be looking at 2 of these in our session today. We're going to be looking at the responsibilities of Frederick Douglass, and we're going to be looking at John Brown and self-deception and John Brown. John Brown's real fun. If you're not familiar with his story, whether he is a hero or a villain is a really, really good conversation at any grade level. Like kindergartners will understand how John Brown both did really good things and really not good things. So we teach civics. Getting to know you guys real quick. How many people here in your first couple of years of teaching? Your first year or 2 of teaching? Anyone? Whoa, welcome, yay. Welcome to the hardest, best job. Okay, 2 to 5 years of teaching, 5 to 10, 10 to 15, 15 to 20, 20 to 20, 20 to 30. Let's just go 20 to 30, 30 to 40. Anybody 30 to 40? You're at 34 years in the classroom. Woo! She was in one of my other sessions. I have super fans. So welcome, guys. So there is a couple hundred years of teaching experience in this room. You guys are from across the country. I don't want to talk the whole time, so we're going to be doing some collaborative work so that you can have conversation together, get to know the knowledge within the room. Ultimately, the problem we're trying to solve: what kind of education supports self-governance, and how do I better prepare my students for self-governance? So, what does it mean to be an American? What does being an American mean to me? And what founding principles and civic virtues unite Americans? Take 30 seconds and gather your thoughts. I'm going to ask us to be quiet for about 15 seconds. Okay, and now I'd like you to discuss this for only 2 or 3 minutes just in your group. Just get a sense at your tables, or those of you in the back, you're like in pods. I'm thinking of you guys as tables, pods in the back. You get split up into 2 pods because there are 9 of you over there. But talk about it in your group for 3 or 4 minutes. I'll stop you. But what does being an American mean, and what founding principles and civic virtues unite Americans? Okay, take about another minute. If someone hasn't spoken up yet, you can encourage them. Give them space. Okay. Does anybody want to share the general themes that you guys talked about? What were like the general themes? You don't have to be specific. But kind of generally, where did the conversation go at your table? Freedom. Liberty. Yeah. That we all have responsibility. That comes with our rights, that we have rights. Working for a common good. I once had the incredible experience of being in an airport where a group of Somali women were working, and I work at the Bill of Rights Institute, so I have pocket copies of the Constitution all the time. And they were talking about, they were behind me, and they were like, no, in this country, you don't understand. You have rights. You have rights. And they just kept saying that over and over to each other. And I was like, this is amazing. I was like, do you guys want pocket constitutions? do you want that? I mean, you don't have to, but like I have them. It was this really beautiful, beautiful conversation. Any other thoughts? Big themes that came out of your conversation? Things you're thinking about now that you maybe weren't 10 minutes ago?
Just going along with it, that the purpose of our government is to protect your rights, not to, be like a monarch here.
It's not to protect itself, it's to protect us. Yeah. Awesome. Okay, so that's setting the stage. We're intellectually all in the right place now. Okay, how many of you here have heard of a threshold concept? Has anybody ever heard this concept? So my other background is that I have a background in learning design and technology, which is a weird thing for a Johnny to have gone into, but I'm really enjoying the work. And I was introduced to this, and it was really transformative and powerful in my own kind of thinking about what curriculum is and how we design it. And so a threshold concept is similar to a portal. It opens up a new and previously inaccessible way of thinking about something. It represents a transformed way of understanding or interpreting or viewing something without which the learner cannot progress. And once it happens, you can't unsee it, right? Like your whole frame of reference changes when you learn this concept. In economics, a really common one when economics students learn about opportunity cost. That is a threshold concept. When you see it, you can't unsee it, right? For many people, individual liberty can be a threshold concept. You're like, no, we are like, this is it. And then you're like, nope, that infringes on liberty. Nope, that infringes on liberty. Nope, that, and you can't unsee liberty. So this idea of a threshold concept was really powerful to me. I like sharing it with educators because you can kind of design a curriculum around it and say, what are the threshold concepts? What are the essential concepts that we're working with that my students will be exposed to that will transform their thinking? It's irreversible, it's integrative, and it's possibly troublesome. It's hard, and it can be a really emotional experience when you're exposed to something that you haven't considered before, and it changes your entire worldview. So here's something that was a bit transformative to me. And that's the idea that America is a propositional nation. That is what unites us. What do I mean? Not my words. They're the words of Abraham Lincoln. 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. So honing on this word nation, this body of people. Usually, throughout history, nations were united by common descent, by a common history, culture, language, or they were inhabiting a particular country or territory. But that's not America. Living in Maine is very different than living in Arizona. We don't inhabit a common territory or even really a common country. Our states are very much that's more and more apparent in the past 3 years, right? That our states are very much states. They're not common. What is the commonality? Conceived in liberty, that's a whole other conversation that we could talk about at some time, but we are dedicated to a proposition. We can all agree on this proposition that all men are created equal. So America is a propositional nation. The thing that we can unite around is this idea of all men are created equal. Okay, so now, in your group, Let's quickly reflect on that. What's troublesome about that idea? What strikes you about that? I'm going to give you probably about 2 minutes to talk about this new idea for many of you. Has anybody heard this before? America's a proposition. A couple of you, there are speeches on it. I'm not this smart. Someone else came up with this idea, but it was profoundly transformative for me to think about this. Okay, in your small groups, kind of reflect. Think about that together. Does this ring true to you? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Okay, let's come back together. Anybody want to share the kind of themes discussed? Anything new you thought about or ideas you were excited to share with your table mates? Go ahead.
I didn't really share this with the group, but something that
I love it.
something that comes to mind to me is just like, well, I guess you kind of brought it up. And like, we have different states, and like within each state, they're kind of like a country, and so we all have the freedom to do what we feel like is best in that state.
Yeah.
But like, we're all different, and it varies from each state to state. And for me, what is troublesome about this idea is that like, we may all be created equal, but when created equally, but when you listen to people's stories, like that equality doesn't get shared the same way. Like it looks differently based off who's getting the story.
What does equal mean would be the question that you would then have to unpack. And that's a whole other conversation that you can have for many class periods with small humans. What does equal mean? Because it has lots of definitions. But yeah, I think that that's important, is that what does equal mean? It would be something you'd have to answer first before really understanding the proposition. Yeah?
I'd say too, I almost feel like it needs to be continually revisited. Right? Like we could take lots of class periods, but it must continue to take lots of class periods.
Forever and ever, always, for all time. Yeah. No, I know. This is the thing about especially classical teaching that I found, because I was in a lot of schools that had very classical curriculums, that every single group of students has to do all the same learning every time. Like there's never going to be a year where you're like, oh no, they already got this. Like it's just not going to happen, because, and that's the process of democracy. I feel like one of the things, I was actually talking to my Uber driver who lived in Liberia for 15 years this morning, and we were talking about, I'm a wallflower, I don't ever talk to anybody. And we were talking about the fact that every generation has to renew this promise. We have to continually be dedicated. That's where that word dedicated is really important, because what does it mean to be dedicated? And we have to continually be dedicated, right? Okay, so why did I want to talk about that? Because meaning is important. What learning is transformational learning for meaning. So one of my favorite educational philosophers, he's actually just a philosopher who turned his attention to education, is Matthew Lipman. Anyone here was in my philosophy for children session? A couple of you. So this was the guy that I referred to in that. But in your packet, I have, we're going to read something quickly. So it's on page 12 in your packet. Actually, it's on page 13 in your packet. Thinking and the school curriculum. This is chapter 2 in this book. The child's hunger for meaning. All of us, not just children, have known what it is for things to lack meaning. It is a deeply disturbing experience, much more so than simply being puzzled. When we're puzzled, we suspect there's an answer somewhere that will yield understanding, but meaningless can be terrifying. Children who sit in their desks and are inundated with factual information that seems jumbled, pointless, and unconnected to their lives have a direct sense of the meaninglessness of their experience. Meaninglessness is a much more fundamental problem than simply not knowing what to believe. Children who are experiencing it desperately search for clues that give them guidance of some kind. Adults in this condition will often turn to their desperation to astrology, I like that he's throwing shade, or other quick and easy nostrums. But children don't know where to turn, and since school is compulsory, many children find themselves imprisoned in a nightmare. People often think that the problem lies not in the educational process, but that there's so many children are bored and apathetic, and then he goes on to talk about family life. But if school experience were as rich and meaningful as it is capable of being, we would not see children detesting their lives in school, as so many in fact do. This is preaching to the choir on this matter, but it's my challenge to you with your history, especially your American history, is helping even the youngest children understand meaning. Because when I look at the overview of topics and when I look at the content within something like a core knowledge sequence, there is a lot of fantastic content. Again, content-rich education is essential and important, and I am in no way deterring that. But we also have the onus to go beyond it and to bring meaning at the youngest ages when they don't have access to the same quality of primary sources that they do at the older ages. So that's my challenge to you, is how are you bringing meaning at the younger ages when they don't have access intellectually to the primary sources that are meaningful in the older levels? Because when you look at the older levels and you see the text they're reading in history and English, they're already meaning rich. So just because there aren't primary sources doesn't mean they can't be philosophically rich. And my challenge to you is to look at the resources and say, is this philosophically interesting? Is there something in here that they could talk about? Is there something in here that connects to the character work we're doing elsewhere? Is there something in here that would lead to a dialogue? And if the answer is no, then there are places you can go to supplement. Because philosophy for children is really, really important. I have the whole other session, but if you're interested in philosophy for children, you have a 35-page resource list in the back that includes quite a few resources. I just made one master resource list for all my sessions, so it also has stuff on junior republics and all the other stuff I was doing. It's been a long 2 days. So not only do we just know that philosophically rich learning is valuable, the data shows it. So if you're ever asked that, one of the really wonderful things when you're doing philosophically rich work is that there's a lot of research on how philosophically rich work transforms student learning. Okay, so because we still have time. This is the first session I'm actually on time, which is weird because I started late. I don't understand how that works. I don't understand time. It's a construct. Don't think about it too hard. Mini seminar on Lincoln and MLK. So the Bill of Rights Institute, as I said, has this amazing resource called Heroes and Villains. One of my favorite activities in Heroes and Villains is a activity that we do it's actually in the John Brown, it's in the John Brown lesson. It starts on page, it's the second page. So if you just turn the page, it's right here. It says, primary source activity, Abraham Lincoln, the perpetuation of our political institutions, addressed to the Young Men's Lyceum. Those of you who do upper level humanities, you've probably read excerpts of this. I'm not sure, has anybody in the lower level, are you guys familiar with this text? Anybody read it before? A couple of you? Just one or two of you have read it before. Oh, this is so exciting. Okay. So this is Lincoln. Lincoln, 1838. Don't pay attention to the date. It would confuse some things. But 1838, he's addressing basically a YMCA group. That's like a way to think about it. And in it, he says, let's find it. So I'm going to skip around a little bit. The question recurs, so there are all these mobs. There are young men in mobs roaming through the streets. And Lincoln is giving an address to address this. The question recurs, so I'm on the bottom of the first paragraph. How shall we fortify against it? The answer is simple. Let every lover of liberty, every well-wisher to his posterity, swear by the blood of the revolution never to violate in the least particular the laws of the country, and never to tolerate their violation by others. As the patriots of '76 did to the support of the Declaration of Independence, so too the support of the Constitution and laws. Let every American pledge his life, his property, and his sacred honor. Let every man remember that to violate the law is to trample on the blood of his father and to tear the character of his own and his children's liberty. Let reverence for the laws be breathed by every American mother to the lisping babe that prattles on her lap. Let it be taught in the schools and seminaries and in colleges. Let it be written in primers, spelling books, and the almanacs. Let it be preached from the pulpit, proclaimed in the legislative halls, and enforced in the courts of justice. And in short, let it become a political religion of the nation. And let the old and the young, the rich and the poor, the grave and the gay, and all sexes and tongues and colors and conditions sacrifice unceasingly upon its altar. Okay. Skip a paragraph. While I so pressingly urge a strict observance of all laws, let me not be understood as saying there are no bad laws. Let me be understood as saying nor that grievances may not arise for the redress of which no legal provisions have been made. I mean to say no such thing, but I do mean to say that although bad laws, if they exist, should be repealed as soon as possible, still while they continue in force, for the sake of example, they should be religiously observed. Okay, Lincoln. A figure most of your students are familiar with, making a very strong argument. Let's turn to MLK. Martin Luther King letter from Birmingham jail, one of the greatest pieces of American rhetoric in American history. If you haven't read it in its entirety, it is worth your time. It's up there with Frederick Douglass's What to the Slave is the 4th of July. It's just incredible rhetoric in American history. He has something crazy, he's writing from jail. He's sitting in a jail cell writing this, and he has 350 classical references throughout the 8 pages to other works. And he's just sitting there, he doesn't have his library with him. It blows my mind. Okay, so for him, we'll do probably the most famous part of this, which is just the first paragraph. You express a great deal of anxiety over our willingness to break laws. This is certainly a legitimate concern since we are so diligently urge people to obey the Supreme Court decision of 1954 outlawing segregation in the public schools. At first glance, it may seem rather strange and paradoxical to find us consciously breaking laws. One may well ask, how do you advocate breaking some laws and obeying others? The answer lies in the fact that there are 2 types of law. Just and unjust. One has not a legal but a moral responsibility to obey just laws. Conversely, one has a moral responsibility to disobey unjust laws. Now, what's the difference between the two? I would agree with St. Augustine that an unjust law is no law at all. Now, what is the difference between the two? How does one determine whether a law is just or unjust? A just law is a man-made code that squares with the moral law or the law of God. An unjust law is a code that is out of harmony with the moral law. Any law that uplifts human personality is just. Any law that degrades human personality is unjust. And then he goes on to say, hold on. I need to find it. But he goes on to say that when you break the law, you have to be willing to live with the consequences of the breaking of the law. You have to submit to the authority that you have broken the law, which is why he's sitting in the jail cell. Okay, so 2 men who have very strong opinions that are opposite each other about the nature of what is a good law. So I'm going to ask you guys to take 2 minutes, because I didn't have as much time as I thought I did, to talk about what is a just law. Okay, just about another 30 seconds. Wrap up your thoughts. Okay, let's come back together. So there are resources out there for you all, even at this age, even at the ages you're working on, to find quotes, sentences that bring meaning to the content for those young people. And when it happens, it's incredible. The conversations that they're able to have about justice and truth and love and beauty are phenomenal. And my challenge to you is to integrate it into your history content. Again, it happens a little more smoothly at the upper levels because the content they're reading is already philosophically rich. And this really matters. This really matters, especially those of you at public charters. The civic mission of schooling is a fundamental mission of public education in the United States, whatever form it takes. That we have a responsibility to our young people to prepare them to live in a society that's a propositional nation, that's built on ideas more than anything else. And so if they're not engaging deeply and meaningful with complex ideas early on, then we're missing an opportunity to help them engage deeply and meaningfully with larger ideas when they're older. Okay, so I think I did it. Did I do it? Awesome. Woo! This is like literally the first time. It's my third time's a charm. Okay, what are we taking away from today's resources? What are you most excited about? How will you modify it? How can I help? Give me some feedback. Bring meaning to your content. There we go. What else? You know where to find us. So the Bill of Rights Institute has also 160 portraits called American Portraits, which are one-page stories of primary figures that come with philosophical questions. The resources in the back of your packet also have philosophical storybook lessons that you can access. Any other thoughts? You can also send me notes in the app. You can send me chats. If there's anything you're missing, yeah, go ahead. K-8 stuff. It would just be shorter. What we have now, we'll still use primary sources. What we have now is 7 to 12. Yeah, we have 7th through 12th grade resources. We have one resource that's about 6th grade, but nothing much lower. So BRI we're writing specifically for the age. Okay, so my last thought. As civilized human beings, we are inheritors neither of an inquiry about ourselves and the world, nor of an accumulated body of information, but of a conversation, begun in the primeval forests and extending and made more articulate in the course of centuries. It is a conversation that goes on both in public and within each of ourselves. Thank you for being in conversation with me and each other today. Thank you for the incredible work you're doing around the country. I'm available. You can meet with me at any time, and if you have any questions, I'll be up here. Thank you all very much.